Hey, Amber, if you can hear me, we are ready to go, so you can start on time when you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you. And excuse me, I don't know if you heard, well, since we're recording, I'll send it in an email. I think I understand. We have 2 interviews today though, correct?
Yes, and there will
Okay.
not be a vote today.
Right. We'll have one next week. So my emails were a little confusing. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Hi, Morgan. Karina, I'm going to call us to order here. Do you want to put up the slides for participation? So I am calling to order. I think we have a quorum at this point, and people are coming in. So I'm going to call to order the Parks. Are we officially the Parks and Conservation Committee for March 2nd? We continue to meet virtually. You can see on the screen how to participate. We are certainly hoping that very soon we are not just meeting virtually, but for now you can join us at ci.missoula.mt.us/webcast. You could also leave us a city council voicemail or an email that will go to all of us, and you can leave those for any purpose related to city business. And with that, I think you could take that down. And if Karina, if you do roll for me, that would be great.
Yes, just a minute. Sorry, that is taking me a while to click around here. Okay.
Okay, good.
Let's see here. Anderson. Okay, I don't see. Oh, that was Heidi. Okay, that Stacy is not here. Becerra.
Present.
Carlino.
Present.
Contos.
Here.
Hess.
Hess is out this morning.
Jones.
Present.
Jordan.
Present.
Mike Nugent.
Present.
Savage.
Present.
Cheryl.
Present.
Paseka.
Present.
West.
Present.
Okay, and we do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. We have minutes. I think it said there are minutes from the 2nd of March, but that's today. So they are actually minutes from our meeting on the 23rd of February. If there are no changes to those minutes, I will have them stand as approved. I do not see anyone's hand up to make any changes. And on the minutes, they are correct that they say February 23rd. It's just in the note on the agenda that it says the 2nd. So that will stand as approved. And I can hear you laughing, John.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
God, sorry.
That was my mistake. Yes, I put the wrong date, but I attached the right minutes. So
You did, yeah. So that's what I wanted to point out. We don't need to change the minutes. The minutes are correct.
I will get that fixed. Sorry about
Okay.
that, guys.
Oh, no problem at all. And I will go to public comment on items that are not on the agenda. So I see a few of the public here. Go ahead and raise your hand if you want to comment on something that is not on the agenda. I think most of you are here for our first agenda item. Okay, so I don't see any public comment. So we're going to start off. Morgan's here, and he is going to take us through the Marshall Mountain Park master planning contract. So take it away, George. Or yeah.
Yeah, hello. It's great to see you all. Got a few people joining me today. Nathan McLeod, who does a lot of our parks design and planning. And then we also have John O'Connor, Kimberly Baker, and Jed Dennison from our Friends of Marshall Mountain group, who are actively involved in fundraising. We're going to kind of tag team this presentation. I'm going to talk for a little bit. Then Nathan's going to hop in, and then John will hop in as well and talk a little bit about their efforts. Got a lot of information. I'm going to.
Morgan, do you want me to promote them all, panelists?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
And then we got a lot of information here, and I'm going to just blaze through it real quick, and then I think we should have some time for questions. But
great. And so Jed, John, and Kimberly, is that who you said? Or
yes, ma'am.
We have Al. Okay, great.
So. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right. So as you know, the city is working to both acquire and plan Marshall Mountain Park. This is for lack of a better term, kind of a unique project for us. It's definitely one that is constantly evolving, and we've got quite a group of citizens and other partners that are helping us with this process. Today, we're bringing forward a contract to begin master planning for the Marshall Mountain site. But before I get into the details of that, just to give you a little background. Marshall Mountain was an old ski area about 5 miles northeast of Missoula. It closed in 2003. Here's a map of generally these 3 parcels that you see here comprise the old ski area. Of course, it's surrounded by federal land. That's all these areas in green. In general, the property is split up into 3 parcels. The base area property, which is 160 acres and is currently owned by Izzy Dog LLC. The mid-mountain parcel, which is also 160 acres, that's owned by Five Valleys Land Trust. And then about 100 acres that are in an old ski area special use permit with the Forest Service. The city currently has 10 to 16 months left in a lease agreement with an option to buy the base area. And we also are in negotiations, very positive negotiations with Five Valleys Land Trust on including the 160 acre Five Valleys mid-mountain parcel in the entire acquisition that the city would hopefully do. So why do we want to purchase Marshall? Since 2003, since it's closed, Marshall really has evolved in the unofficial home for outdoor recreation programming and events. There have literally been thousands of local youth and adults who are learning new skills up there. There's multiple local businesses and nonprofits that have relied on the site over the last 20 years to run kids programming, to do special events, et cetera, et cetera. And there's just been this long legacy of community and private events, everything from weddings to large national mountain bike races have continued to be held at Marshall Mountain. And that is really one of the driving factors that led to the purchase of the base area property by Izzy Dog LLC, and then the lease agreement that we have with the city. Marshall is recognized as an open space cornerstone in our 2019 City County Open Space Bond Plan. The last time we actually polled the public on whether or not they thought we should purchase Marshall Mountain. In 2018, the city and the county did the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Community Needs Survey. This was a large survey across the county. It had really high levels of response. It was a statistically valid survey that asked people, generally what they wanted to see in the future as we continue to develop our parks and open lands and trail system. In general, 47% of the people strongly supported purchasing Marshall Mountain. 24% somewhat supported it. 14 were not sure, and 15 did not support at all. In fact, of all the questions asked, Marshall actually made it into the executive summary of that report. And this was, contracted out for a professional consultant team to run the survey. And although there is the strongest support in the survey for purchasing land for wildlife and ecological reasons, Marshall Mountain specifically was also named as one of the most supported acquisitions in that survey of all of city across city and county residents. So where are we at today? In June 2021, the city entered into a lease with an option to buy Marshall Mountain. And so at that point, the city took over management of the base area and started to work towards getting the area safe for the public and then also developing an acquisition plan. Very early on, we convened a primary partners team comprised of folks at the city of Missoula, folks at Missoula County. The county is a big player in this as well. Five Valleys Land Trust, who has been very involved with Marshall for a long time and of course owns 160 acres of the property. Mountain Bike Missoula, who has done a lot of the trail development over the past 15 years on the property. And then of course, Izzy Dog LLC as the owners of the base area. And so those primary partners really have worked on helping us prepare and open the area to the public. And then which the area actually officially opened legally for recreation in August of 2021, and then to really develop that plan for public engagement. Over this fall and winter, we've really worked to recruit a fundraising group, Friends of Marshall Mountain. We've got several of the co-chairs here today, and they're going to speak a little bit at the end of the presentation, have actively come together and are formulating the plan to raise private funds and grant dollars to acquire and build the mountain. We've developed and implemented an interim permit for events and programming at Marshall. You approved a lot of fees a few months ago. We are accepting applications. We've gotten a lot of applications. In general, there's going to be a lot of events and outfitters and programming that is occurring up at Marshall over the next summer. And then we've conducted a broad community visioning process. And here I'll turn it over to Nathan. He has really spearheaded the majority of our community visioning process, and he's going to talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Morgan. So we've been working over the past few months on this shared community vision for Marshall. And so this document is on engagemissoula.com and it's available. It's in draft format right now. It includes over 70 pages of public comment. So if you're going to get in there, make sure you have an hour or so to read through it. So we started this with a series of targeted stakeholder meetings where we had 93 participants from a variety of organizations that came together to provide their input on what Marshall should be. Following this stakeholder brainstorming session, we used Engage Missoula to provide the information about the project and included an online survey. This slide is actually a little bit off. I just found out that our total reach of the project online was over 6,000 people and included over 1,300 people that actually filled out the survey. So this far and away exceeds anything that the city has had on Engage Missoula to this date, with the next highest participation rate being the Community Housing Needs Assessment in 2021, which had a little more than 700 participants. So Morgan, you can jump to the next slide. So I just want to briefly talk about a little bit about what we heard from the community. And remember, the intent of the community vision is to define the broad goals and shared values for the park, and it will be used to guide the master planning process. So a couple goals that I think are worthy of mentioning here are that Marshall Mountain should be an all-season, all-access outdoor recreation and education area. It should be accessible to all ages and abilities, and it should continue to provide, as it has done for generations, a place for Missoula's youth to learn responsible recreation and stewardship principles. You can go to the next slide. So what's in the master plan and why is it important to do this now? So during the master planning process, the consultants will take the information that we've gathered so far about the site, the existing infrastructure, the environment, the climate, And we'll combine that with the goals and values that were generated during that community visioning process to create a plan that will guide the development, the programming, and the operation of Marshall Mountain into the future. The plan will define activities that are feasible and desirable for Marshall Mountain. Now, one of the most important aspects of this plan is the financial analysis and strategic business plan. So the team will compare the cost to construct and operate Marshall with the expected revenue and operating expenses. And the result will be presented in a 10-year financial pro forma analysis that will demonstrate the capital requirements and operating metrics for the plan over time. So knowing what Marshall can and should look like into the future and what it will cost is critically important for fundraising and planning efforts prior to the city acquiring the property. So in addition to the financial analysis and the technical details provided by the plan, having a tangible product that represents what we've heard in the community visioning process will move mountains in terms of getting people excited about the project and helping to ensure it is developed and cared for into the future. Back to you, Morgan.
Thank you, Nathan. So our future activities, obviously, the big thing that we need to work on over this spring is developing that master plan for Marshall Mountain. Nathan mentioned that in addition to providing the vision of like what we are actually going to build, what programming would be allowed, how we can make this project pencil, we're going to get cost estimates for construction, of course, and then also that long-term fiscal plan on how to cover our long-term operation and maintenance of the site. And I'm not going to speak much about this because we've got John O'Connor who's going to chime in here soon, but it's really evident. And as this fundraising campaign really gets going, you know, we certainly know what it's going to cost to acquire the mountain. We do not know what it's going to cost to build. And we also do not know what we're going to build. Those are critical questions that we have to answer in order to stimulate people to give money to this project. Those are the number one and two questions that come out of folks when you ask them for money. Well, what are you going to do with the money? So in general, between March and August, this spring and through the summer, we are really going to be focused on that master plan. The fundraising campaign is really going to get going with Friends of Marshall Mountain. We are going to continue to have thousands of people visit the mountain. Our daily average that we've been logging through last year was about 43 people a day. We do have several large events planned, large national mountain bike races that are coming to town. Lots of kids camps are going to be using this both within our Parks and Rec program and within the broader community. Next fall, between September and July, it's really going to be about funding. That fundraising campaign is going to move into not just securing funds for acquisition, but also for building Marshall, enacting that master plan. Sometime late fall, in the winter, that's when we really expect city and county open space committees to start to actually vet acquisition of Marshall Mountain. And obviously, you're very familiar with the process of actually acquiring open space lands. And so, having all these pieces come together is really what's going to allow us to make informed decisions and allow you to make informed decisions as we move forward with the project. And then, in July of 2023 marks the end of our lease period. Hopefully, we've got the project largely funded and we're ready to start building the phases of Marshall Mountain. So today, we are asking for a recommendation for the mayor to sign and approve a contract with SE Group for $130,000 to plan, do the master planning, the fiscal analysis, and the strategic business plan for Marshall Mountain. We are recommending that these funds come out of the Conservation and Stewardship, and I use this loosely, but Restoration and Acquisition Reserve Fund. And that fund would then be reimbursed through private fundraising. So a little background on that CNS Mill Levy Reserve Fund. If you recall, when we created our budgets for the Conservation and Stewardship Mill Levy, we decided every year to put a up to 10% of the value of the mill levy into a reserve fund. And this is from the resolution creating that reserve fund. And it's largely for the purposes of major restoration of open space lands, mitigation of open space lands when damaged, capital outlay of equipment to support efforts in the areas of conservation and stewardship, and the ability to acquire future open space parcels per citizen input and adopted plans, and the ability to bond for qualifying projects and capital improvements. These bar graphs, if you see these little red portions are the capital outlay that we've done year after year. We usually don't know exactly how much is going in because it depends a lot on how things are looking at the end of our fiscal year. We've been able to sometimes put in 20% right out of the gate. This year, we're looking at 10%. By the end of fiscal year 2022, we should have an approximate balance of about $500,000 in that fund. So I've got John O'Connor here. I'll turn it over to him really briefly just to introduce the Friends Group. They are a nonprofit partner that is committed to fundraising and reimbursing expenses related to the planning, acquisition, and phase development of Marshall Mountain Park. So John, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Morgan. Everybody hear me all right?
Yeah, yep, we can hear you. Morgan, do you want to go ahead and take down your screen?
Sure.
And John, if you want to, I don't know if you have your video on. If you want to turn your video on, you could do that. Otherwise, we can just hear your voice.
Oh, my video is showing is on here and I can see my face.
We can see
I
you.
can see your face now too. Go ahead.
Thanks, Amber. Great. Well, thank you very much for allowing our committee to have a presence here. Again, my name is John O'Connor. I'm one of the co-chairs for the Friends of Marshall Mountain Group. Kimberly Baker is on this call. She's another co-chair, as well as Jed Dennison. And then Jeff Crouch, who is unable to be with us today, is the fourth co-chair of that group. And for full disclosure, I need to add that I'm a member of the Parks Board and have been on Parks Board for quite some time now. I was involved in the Fort Missoula Regional Park project and led that campaign. I'm also a member, as is Kimberly, of a group called Friends of Missoula Parks, and we're a 501c3 whose mission is to promote parks and recreation, conservation lands, and forestry in and around Missoula. And we've had a presence in Missoula for some time with projects like the bear-proof trash cans in Greeno Park, the bridge over the Rattlesnake Creek, and then we also are fiscal sponsors for projects such as the All Abilities Playground and Fort Missoula Regional Park. So we came together last fall for the purpose of doing some private fundraising to help the city acquire the lower portion of the mountain from Izzy Dog. That was our sort of original intent, was to find ways to raise the money to help the city acquire that property. Since that time, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and we now recognize that we can have an impact not only on helping the city acquire the land, but on helping the city raise the funds for the development of the project. But key to that component, as Morgan has mentioned, is that master plan. We've already identified some grant and foundation opportunities, all of which require a master plan to be put together so they can see what the scope of the project is. And many of those opportunities require evidence of all abilities, so access for everyone and some equity in that. So we feel it's extremely important for the city to go forward with the master planning portion of this project. It'll help us in our efforts to raise funds as well. So with that, I just want to be brief and let you know that we really support this effort. We feel it's vital to our private efforts. We've got sort of a cadre of people who are ready to go to work with us when the time is right to raise the funds. And we feel we will only be successful if that master planning step has already taken place. And if Jed or Kimberly want to say anything, please, now's the time.
Thanks, John. Kimberly or Jed, if you have anything to add, you could do that now, though I think that was a pretty thorough thorough presentation. We're under a little bit of a time crunch here, unfortunately. So because we have some interviews that we need to do after this, I want to make a couple of comments on this myself. So first of all, Nathan, I appreciate your presentation. And what I say all the time is that Missoulians have an insatiable appetite for open space lands and recreation lands. And this is obviously no exception given the numbers and the impressive increase in numbers since you presented the slide. So also, I want to say that, you know, that when we passed the stewardship levy years ago, as Morgan pointed out, that we decided we were going to put money aside for special projects, for, you know, a rainy day fund, for an opportunity fund is kind of how I think about it. And I think this is a perfect use of that money because it is an opportunity. And, you know, the timing, I want to add as well with, you know, from what John had said, the timing of this, you know, being a fundraiser for many, many years, you can't just go to someone and say, we've got this great idea in our head that we want to fund and we want you to give us money. It doesn't work that way. You need to have a really solid plan going forward. So I do believe that, you know, that getting this done using what I'm going to call those opportunity funds that are already put away for something like this and is going to only help in saving money in the long run as far as, you know, letting the group fundraise effectively. We always do a community process on any big project like this and a planning process on any big project like this that we have for city land. So we're just doing it in a little different order than we normally do. I'm speaking fast because we have someone waiting to interview and I wish we had more time for this. I am going to take questions, but if you would make them somewhat brief, that would really help me with my timing of the meeting today. And I think Gwen, you raised your hand first, so go ahead.
Sure, and actually I don't have a question. I was just going to put the motion on the floor if that's okay with the chair, because I know that this is a heavy agenda today, and just briefly say that I'm in support of this. And I think spending some money like this to plan a strategy to then be able to talk with donors to fundraise is actually really strategic. And I think it's going to enable us to stretch our open space dollars a lot more. So I think it's a really thoughtful strategy and I'm in support of it.
Thanks, Gwen, and thank you for putting that on the floor. Heidi, go ahead.
I'll just make a. I muted myself again. I absolutely support this. I think it's vital to have this document, especially for fundraising, if we're going to actually be successful in this effort. And then my question is, just to make sure I understand it correctly, that this plan would be for the 60 acre parcels, and then that third funny shaped parcel is actually still owned by the National Forest Service. It just has a ski area easement on it, correct?
Yeah, the plan would be for the entire 360 acres, including the Five Valleys Land Trust property.
Okay.
And it also involves fully vetting those landscape scale connections on Forest Service ground as well. So we will be working with the Forest Service as we develop to really look at how to connect Marshall to the larger landscape.
That was actually going to be my next question. So thank you, Morgan. That's great.
Thanks, Heidi. Sandra.
Thanks. So I noticed in the presentation, there was a survey on who was, how many people were in support of purchasing this versus not. But I looked at the full survey report on Engage Missoula and I didn't see that on there. Did I just miss it? Or where did those numbers come from?
Nathan, I think you were, yeah.
So two different surveys. The survey that had the numbers about purchasing Marshall was from our PROST survey from 2018, which was a whole separate planning process from the specifically around Marshall Mountain.
Oh, is there any way I can look at that survey?
100%. Yeah, we will get that to you. It is posted somewhere on the city's website, but we'll send you a link.
Okay, great. I really appreciate it. Until I look at that survey, just because the numbers are so close and I was looking through the comments on, oh gosh, what was it, like 70 pages of comments, and I didn't get through all of them, but I saw a lot of people that were not really in support of that. So for now, I'm not going to be supporting this, but I'm really on the fence about it. So I might change my mind in the future. But thanks for the great presentation today.
Thank you. And I would say that in the 2018 running the open space bond, there was just strong support. There were two different things that that was a different poll that we did, but there was very strong support for that as well. Thank you for your comments. So Sandy, Mirta.
Thanks. I have a lot of questions, but in the interest of time, I just want to better understand what it is that we're voting on today. So it's to allow the mayor to spend $130,000 to do a study. It's not to, how does that commit us to buying it? If we're spending $130,000 to study, does that put us closer to, are we assuming that we're buying this?
We are currently under a lease with an option to buy. So that does add some assumptions that we are interested in buying the mountain. This is not so much a study as a full formal master planning process. So this will involve high levels of public engagement. It's taking our community's vision and actually putting things on a map, like buildings go here, ski lift stays or goes, trails get built here, here, here. This is how will we have a picnic shelter? Will the buildings stay or will they go? That information is absolutely critical for determining the actual project costs. So there's acquisition, but there's also, we need to get the area prepared for the public and to handle the vision that has been set out there. But where will we land on that spectrum? Will it be currently like it is now, like a trailhead at the end of a dirt road? Or will there be a public-private partnership where someone's managing a coffee shop or bar or event center at the base? And so really taking that time to fully vet out the vision, having those actual costs for what it's going to cost to build, and then what it's going to cost to operate it and maintain it. And so this master plan will give us the tools to properly vet this project and to actively fundraise to acquire and build the property.
Follow up.
Go ahead.
So it's a lot of information to digest in just one meeting, I have to say. So this is, who's doing the planning for, is this done in-house or are we hiring someone?
We are hiring a group called SE Group, and they have done this dozens of times with other communities, taking defunct ski areas. They've got a long track record of doing this. They've not just building these areas from scratch, but also making sure that there's a maintenance plan to get revenue off the site. And so they are, we went through a competitive process and they just blew us away as far as their skill levels, having done this in multiple communities across the United States.
Okay. And one last question, Madam Chair.
Let me just ask one thing as we move forward, because we have some other hands up and we are well past the amount of time that we allotted for this item. Is there any urgency that we make this, we do this vote today, Morgan? I'm just wondering because there are some questions. We're running out of time. If we hold it over until next week and have set aside some time in this committee to have some questions, because I think there's some further information people are going to want.
Our biggest urgency is that we have 10 to 16 months to develop this plan, and we need to be able to get a plan forward in August. And the process to get the consultants took some time, and so getting them started is our biggest urgency. But if we need more time, we can certainly take more time if that's the desire of the committee.
Yeah, I think that I think what we're going to do, I see a number of hands up. really just because we don't have enough time to fully vet this right now. And I apologize. When I saw it at 20 minutes, I thought we are not going to probably be able to get through this in that amount of time. What I think I want to do is to hold this over 1 week. I do understand that you have the need to get this done in a reasonably efficient manner, but I think that we need some other questions answered. And unfortunately, we just are not quite going to have enough time to do that today. Kristen, were you raising your hand on top of raising your hand, or okay, sorry, it looks like you were trying to get my attention. Could we just hold this vote over? I know we have a motion on the table until next committee meeting. Gwen, do I need to do anything other than just say we're holding it over
I think
officially?
you just say holding it over, and I think the clerks will notice it on the committee
Okay.
schedule for next week.
So I'm sorry that we're under time constraints here, because I would like to have kind of gotten this fully vetted today. But that's not going to happen because we have people waiting to be interviewed. So let's hold this over until next week. I want to thank the Friends of Marshall Mountain for attending today. Really appreciate all the work that they're doing, and that many of those people that I know personally have done for the community. And so thank you. And Morgan, I apologize. We don't have enough time to get this all done today.
I understand. Thank you for the time. And please do, if you have specific questions or data that you need, please let us know so we can pull that together.
Yeah, and could you get Sandy the information? That'll give Sandy the opportunity
Yes, 100%.
to review that in time for our next meeting, so she'll feel comfortable making a vote. Jennifer, I see your hand up again.
Yes, I was just going to say, could we all get that information that he's going to pass on to Sandy? If we could get links to the Engage Missoula stuff as well. I know that it's there. It's just sometimes hard to dig things out of that site. That would be super helpful. Thank you.
Great.
No
And I would say, because we are holding this over to my fellow council people, please, if there are questions that you have, I mean, I know we had a lot of hands up. Could you get those to Morgan and Nathan ASAP? Because then we will have, I want to make sure we're in a position next week, since we're holding it off, to do a final vote. So I would really ask that everyone be proactive on this in order to move this forward. Thank you, Morgan, Nathan, John, Kimberly, Jed. Thanks so much. And we're going to move on to our next item. Have a good day.
Thank you. Good luck on the interviews.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm trying to, Karina, I'm trying to promote. Did that work? Okay, I think it did. Carver, are you with
Hello.
us? Oh,
Yeah, I'm here. Hello.
I'm so sorry it took us so long. We had you, I think you were sitting there for a while, and we had a
No, it's okay.
yeah, we had a big item which we're excited about, but it just took a little longer. So
I'm actually really excited about Marshall too. So I was actually I was
Okay.
listening, very interested. So
good.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna just jump right in, mainly because we're really behind at this
Sounds
point.
good.
So I'm generally going to be asking you all the questions. Most of the time we go around with the different council people, but it gets very complicated on Zoom. So I'm going to go through a list of questions. I first want to say thank you for your application. I really appreciate anyone that is interested and willing to do volunteer work really like this. And I think it's a really important committee, and the committee is, moving forward on some really, really big things. So, it's great to have different voices there. The process, we have another interview. We aren't going to be voting today. I'm telling that to the other council people as well, because we do have another interview next week as well. So it's going to be a couple weeks. So I'll just move forward from there. What is your interest in serving on the energy and climate team?
Well, first, I'd like to say just thank you for the opportunity. I mean, it's a pleasure to just have this opportunity to interview. But yeah, to answer that question, I'd say that my values kind of align with the objectives of the energy and climate team. I think that it's super important that we reach carbon neutrality and have zero waste and have 100% clean energy. And there's a bunch of different reasons why I think that's the case. One of the main ones is that I want to stay in Missoula long term. And in order for me to do that, I think that we need to change the way we do things, because on the current track, I don't know, about 60 years down the road if Missoula is going to be the same healthy, safe place to live, with the trend of, worse smoke seasons, lower rivers and stuff like that. And specifically, my partner has asthma, the person I live with, and it's hard. Late summer is hard right now. And I think it's super important that we, fix this issue. So
Great,
that's why.
thank you.
Yeah.
Describe your familiarity with the city's greenhouse gas and energy conservation plan. And are there areas that intersect with the city energy conservation and climate action plan? Very complicated.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'm familiar with both of them. I've read through both of them. My understanding is that the thing that came first was the greenhouse gas inventory report, which kind of went through the municipal operations and identified different areas that we need to improve on with regards to energy consumption. And then the climate action plan kind of goes through those suggestions and makes like a plan on what we need to do and what we need to focus on. Yeah, and they definitely intersect with each other. The climate action plan kind of details like what we should do, whereas the greenhouse gas inventory kind of paints the picture of the problem, really.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have any personal or professional expertise that relates to one of the categories, one of the designated categories in these plans?
I actually have a question about that question. What is the designated categories that you were talking about?
I'm actually, as I'm looking at this, I'm not totally sure.
Okay.
So I guess just as far as this, that's a strange question to me. As I was reading it, I was thinking about that myself.
Yeah.
So maybe just talk about, your personal or professional expertise as it relates to climate change mitigation, carbon neutrality work, those type of things.
Yeah. So, okay, I can answer that. I think the most pertinent experience that I have professionally would be the fact that over the last year and a half, I've been tasked with creating the standard operations and procedures manual for the city of Missoula facilities operations. So I work for the stormwater utility and we manage our MS4 permit. So I had to tour every city facility and identify ways that they can mitigate stormwater pollution. So basically identify areas where it's possible for pollutants to enter surface water. So I think that's the most relevant professional experience I have, just working with people on getting them to change their ways. It's extremely challenging, especially when they've been doing something one way for a long time. And I think that would carry over to the field of climate change work. It's the same principle, like people have been doing things the same way for a long time and we need a change, and it's extremely hard. And it's not as simple as, hey, do this. You got to explain why, you got to give reasons, you got to give alternatives. So I think that's probably the most pertinent experience I have. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. I agree with you. It's hard to get people to change their habits.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
What issues do you consider important for the team to be working on or considering?
I think that the two main ones are going to be the city fleet, and then city buildings. According to the inventory report, those are our two biggest categories of greenhouse gas emissions, other than the resource recovery facility. And I see those two as the hardest to change. And I think the reason why is because there's a disconnect between city employees' attitudes and then the energy and climate team I think when you get on the ground and you talk to people who work in the field and you talk to people who drive trucks around, like, this is not something that they're thinking about. This is not something that they're super concerned about. And it's not like an everyday concern of theirs. They're working really hard. They're doing great work and they're focused on doing their job. So I think the biggest issue that we find is like just the disconnect between employees' attitudes and then the goals that we're trying to accomplish. So I think that campaigns trying to change the culture of city employees, and maybe that starts with the hiring process. Maybe that's, putting up signs, things like that. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have.
Okay, thanks. Can you provide an example of a time when you had to compromise, collaborate, or deal with conflict, and what were the results of your efforts?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the answer to one of the previous questions that I gave. When I was developing that standard operations and procedures manual, I routinely ran into conflict because I would tour a facility, I would find an issue, and then I would have to, I hate to use the word battle, but it was totally a battle to try to get things to change. One example was at the parks facilities, the Hickory facility and the Fort Missoula facility. I identified that people were washing equipment directly into dry wells, which is, it introduces hydrocarbons, nitrogen, phosphorus to the aquifer. So I had to try to get that to change. And unfortunately, I had to issue a notice of violation to one of our own city departments, which created animosity between my department and theirs. And it was a terrible situation. And I learned a lot from it just because I kind of came into it thinking, this has to change. It has to change immediately. Like, I got to be, I got to stand my ground. And then that attitude kind of ended up severing the relationship. And so I think that was a really good learning experience, just to, give compassion with these types of things and understand where people are coming from. So, yeah.
Thanks. I think I have a sense of the answer of your next question, but I'm going to ask it. How would you describe the level of urgency associated with addressing climate change? And how do you talk with people who have a different sense of that urgency?
Good question. Okay. I'd say that we are in dire need of immediate change. I'd say we're in code red. But I think I wouldn't, it's pretty obvious just, seeing the changes year to year, but I wouldn't use that type of language when I was discussing it with someone who has a different view. An example is my mother. When I talk to my mother about it, she has a very different view than I do. And I think one of the tactics I use is I don't really talk about projections or anything that's not tangible, like I don't talk about the projections in 30 years of what climate's supposed to look like, but instead I just kind of like try to lead by example. And one of the points of contention is, she's like, why do you not fly home for every holiday? And then I just kind of explain my decision making and just try to talk through the data and how short-term, long distance air travel is really bad for greenhouse gases and things like that. So, approach it delicately with people who have a different view and just try to focus on facts instead of projections.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
The city and county offer board training twice a year. The training covers good governance, open meetings, public participation and right to know, ethics, conflicts of interest, bylaws, minutes, and parliamentary procedures. The city council feels it's very important that all city board members attend this training. Have you attended or will you attend that training as it's offered?
I have not attended the training, but I'm very willing to. I take part in training, other types of training. We conduct training for spill prevention and things like that with municipal employees. So I value training a lot, and I'm definitely willing to take it.
Great. And then the last question is, the energy and climate team is currently scheduled, and this has been a little bit of a moving thing, to meet monthly at a designated time by the committee. And the current time is the second Thursday of the month at 8 a.m. Do you have time to attend meetings and do the research necessary to participate in the committee activities?
Yeah, I think I just got one word. Yes, definitely.
Okay.
That's all I need to say.
That's usually kind of a short answer. That's great. I'm sorry if this felt a little bit rushed. If
all
you
good.
do have some additional questions, you can send those along to me. And my email is listed on the city site. Otherwise, we're going to do the other 2 interviews. I think we just have 2 more, and then we'll be back with you. But I really appreciate a couple things. I appreciate you just your willingness and interest in this position, and also your work on climate change mitigation. I appreciate every person that's involved in that, because I agree. I think we're at code red. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Okay, so that was a bit of a rush along here, which I apologize for. Let me promote. Let's see if we can get Allie in here. Allie, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hi, good morning.
Oh, yeah, there you are. Okay, I apologize. We went long. We had an item earlier that we just didn't quite have enough time for. So thank you for sticking with us. And I think, you know, what I'd done in the last interview is kind of gone through the questions, and then generally we leave time for the candidates to ask questions, but I'm going to ask for you to send those to me. If you have any additional questions. I saw that you were in the, I guess the audience is what we'll call it. So I think you probably heard the timeline that we've got interviews next week as well. And so it'll be a couple weeks. But I want to start by just saying that I really appreciate your interest in this. Appreciate everyone willing to work on this issue, and everyone that's willing to spend their extra time doing committees that are so important for City Council to, you know, have some other expertise and some other vetting of things that come to us. So I am going to jump, unless you wanted to say something, I'm going to jump right in only because of timing. So what is your interest in serving on the energy and climate team?
So I think that we have, well, let me backtrack and just say thank you all for taking the time to get to know me through this process of choosing a team member. I'm excited to have the opportunity. But back to your question, I think that we have a lot of motivated people working on energy and climate policy and programs here in Missoula, and we're also continuing to grow as a community, as a government, as an employer. And I know that this energy and climate team has shifted its focus inwards. And I think that's really important. I think it's really important that the city in its municipal operations is a leader in climate action, especially given our existing community policies and resolutions. And I would love to help foster that collaboration and also innovation for the future.
Great, thanks. Describe your familiarity with the city's greenhouse gas and energy conservation plan. Are there areas that intersect with the city's energy conservation and climate action plan?
Sure. So I hate to say it, but I actually had some trouble preparing for this question. I have not been able to find a specifically titled Greenhouse Gas and Energy Conservation Plan to compare to what I know of the Energy Conservation and Climate Action Plan. And so I would say that if there is another relevant plan, I would absolutely be interested in reading it and learning about it. But if not, I think it's a great opportunity for a knowledgeable city employee representative to help with transparency and accuracy in communication, in our communications. But I will say that I'm quite familiar with our emissions inventory and our energy conservation and climate action plan. I was introduced to these documents during my term of AmeriCorps service with Climate Smart Missoula, and I use them now in my work to help reduce our impact from transportation from employee commutes. I also know that it's our goal to reach carbon neutrality by 2025, and over time, and as city operations have expanded, particularly to include a municipal water utility, we've seen, unfortunately, a drastic increase in those reported emissions. And I think with our goals in mind, this is really a huge opportunity to focus and make some great headway in terms of emissions reductions within our municipality.
Great, thank you. And do you have any personal or professional expertise as it relates to climate action, carbon neutrality? I'm kind of changing this question a little bit based on our last interview, but go ahead.
Sure. So currently, as a transportation demand management professional, I use targeted programs as well as education and outreach to catalyze behavior change in terms of reducing vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions from transportation at the individual level. And within my position, I'm also part of a newly formed electric vehicle car share internal working group. As I mentioned previously, I served an 11-month term with the Montana Energy Corps in 2019 and 2020. And I was really given a crash course in Missoula climate action from my placement with Climate Smart Missoula. And I would say in part that education came from meetings that I regularly attended with an energy ad hoc group who created the Clean Electricity and Energy Resolution. And we worked on developing the MOU with Northwestern Energy regarding the provision of clean electricity. And we worked with the city, the county, local nonprofits, and advocates. And I also split my term of service. So I was part-time with Climate Smart Missoula, part-time with St. Patrick Hospital, where I worked specifically on greenhouse gas emissions reduction program towards Providence's goal of being carbon negative by 2030. And so we worked on waste reduction, energy conservation, transportation, food, aerosols, across the board. And just one final point, I have a master's in science and climate change. During that program, I took a really interdisciplinary approach and studied climate tipping points and regional climate modeling, but also courses on developing policies for building community resilience. So overall, I think I have quite an interdisciplinary set of skills to add to this team.
Great, thank you. What issues do you consider important for the team to be considering?
Sure. So I'll answer this question from the point of view of solutions that I think would help really push us forward. One being obviously the electrification of our city operations, including facilities and fleets, but also fostering a transition to 100% clean and renewable energy sources. I know there's been a lot of emphasis historically on the need to change our individual actions to be more environmentally friendly. And of course, I think that the more we each do, the better off we'll be. But ultimately, we would be unable to meet our emissions reduction goals without systems change. And I think there are many ways to do that. And we just have to set ourselves up for success. And I've just got 2 more points. I'll try and be quick. One major solution that I think is important is combined mitigation and adaptation. 2 ideas there are increasing and preserving the amount of green space in our region, but also developing a diversified clean energy portfolio. And then obviously from a transportation perspective, I know that the city and our metropolitan planning organization have tangible and measurable goals regarding increasing our current mode split and am also familiar with our community and our city emissions inventories. And I know that transitioning our transportation sector really offers a huge opportunity to reduce emissions, but also build individual capacity and community resilience.
Great, thank you. Can you provide an example of a time when you had to compromise, collaborate, or deal with conflict? And what were the results of those efforts?
Of course. So I've collaborated in teams and working groups in school and at every job I've ever had. I will say that I always feel that good communication and setting expectations is really the recipe for success in bringing together diverse voices and perspectives in developing and implementing something great and impactful.
Great, thank you. Let's see. How would you describe the level of urgency associated with addressing climate change? And how do you talk to people who have a different sense of that urgency?
Urgency, 10 on a scale of 10. I know that we need rapid and sustained decarbonization and systems transportation like 40 years ago. And in our region alone, we're seeing longer, more intense wildfire seasons, shorter, less frequent precipitation events, longer droughts, more frequent heat waves, a whole host of climate-related health issues. And those impacts are only projected to be more variable and extreme over time. In regard to your second question, I think a key facet of communicating climate change science to people who find taking action to be less urgent or not urgent at all is to relate the climate crisis to something that that person cares about. So for example, when I worked on education campaigns at St. Pat's, we would focus on the intersect of climate change and health. And I think that due to the nature of climate change and the wide range of impacts, there's always a different way to frame the need for action.
Thank you. The intersection of health, I think, is a really interesting one. We talk about that on the health board. So let's see, the city and county offer board training twice a year. The training covers good governance, open meetings, public participation and right to know, ethics, conflicts of interest, bylaws, minutes, and parliamentary procedures. The city council feels it's very important that all city board members attend this training. Have you attended, or would you be willing to attend the training?
I haven't served on a board, so I haven't attended any of these trainings, if that is specifically who they're provided for, but I absolutely would.
Right. And then the last question, the energy and climate team is currently scheduled to meet monthly with the time designated by the committee. The meetings are set, and what's in this it's been morphing a bit, trying to make it work for everyone and for different schedules. But right now it's the second Thursday of the month, not at noon, but at 8 a.m. Do you have time to attend these meetings and do the research necessary to participate in committee activities?
Yes, I definitely would. It's already something I've spoken with my supervisors about, and I have their full support.
That's great. Thank you. And I apologize again that we don't have time for questions from you, but I am happy to answer those if you want to send them to my email if you have any. And just want to say, and thank you for waiting, because I know we got a little off today. And again, I just want to thank you for your interest in doing this and the work that you do in this area currently. So really appreciate anyone that is willing to spend their time and that recognizes the urgency and is trying to help with it, because we need kind of all hands on deck, I guess is the best way to say it. So and we'll get back with you.
Great, thank you so much. I know that sort of crunch for time, and these are hard questions to give short answers to, so I hope I didn't take too much of it.
No, that was great. That was great. You were very succinct. I appreciate that. Great. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, everyone, for, I feel like I've been in a speed meeting here. Thank you for sticking with us through that. And we are going to adjourn. We have one more interview next week, and then we will start the deliberations. So please just keep your notes on these candidates. And I'm going to adjourn the Parks and Conservation meeting.